Okay, in today's lesson, we're going to learn how to compose uh, code from different files. I've started the lesson with 3 files. I have an app.js, I have an add.js, and a subtract.js. Let's start with the app.js, and we're going to write 2 simple functions. One's going to be called x. It's going to take 2 parameters, an x and a y, and return the addition of those 2. Like so. The second function is going to be a subtract function. It's going to take the same x and the same y and return the subtraction of those 2 numbers. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of display them, make sure we got things set up correctly. We'll just put in a 4 and a 5 on that one. And we'll pass in the same 4 and a 5 here. We'll run this code in Node. Got a little problem here. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I put an S on my functions. There it is. Alright, so sure enough, I got my addition of my 4 plus 5 is 9. My subtraction of 4 minus 5 is minus 1. So what we want to talk about today is that as you're not going to put all your code in one file. So the question is, how do we compose code and use code from different files? So to practice this, or to learn this, to understand how this works, we're going to take the add function out of here and we're going to put it in the add file that I created. Okay, and we're going to save that. So I've got an add file with the add function. I've got my app.js that no longer has the add function. All it has is the subtract function, but I'm going to keep my log function. I'm going to go ahead and try to use this add function right here. I'm going to see what's happening. All I do is put that in another file. Let's see what happens. Well, what you're seeing is that it says add is not defined, and sure enough, add is not defined in this file. What you're going to find out is that in Node, functions and variables are only available in the file that they are created in by default. So we have to do something to make add available to this particular file. So we can start by creating a variable called add, for example, and we're going to set that equal to, I'm going to use this require keyword. I'm going to do this, and what this does, this require is a function available to you from Node. Node provides this function to you. It takes a string that is the path to the file that you want to basically bring in, and it will assign objects in that file to this variable. Okay, so let's try this now. And sure enough, it says add is not a function, so there's still something missing. What's missing is that in this add file, we need to export. We have to let Node know what we want to make available to other files. So what we do is we say module.export equals add. And excuse me, that's exports with an S. What this tells Node is that
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was going to unlock.
Okay, so we're telling Node that we want to export this function. We want this function to be available to other programs. Other items in this file will not be made available, only what we export. Alright, so let's try this. We have that here. We've got a require statement. We've got our export statement. Let's see what we got now. So now you can see that the add function worked. That's pretty cool. So just a couple of notes. On this require function, you can put, since you're pointing to a file, and that file does have a .js, you can put the .js extension on there, and all works just well, just fine. If you misspell it, for example, it doesn't work. The convention is just to leave the JS. The .js is assumed, and so it's not that important. Mostly you'll see it written just like this without the file extension. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take the subtract function and put it in its own file. So we go to subtract, we'll copy this function in. We know we have to export it, so we say module.exports subtract, or excuse me, equals subtract. Okay, now let's go back into our app.js, and we need to assign a variable called subtract. We can call it whatever we want, but we'll just call it subtract. Does that make sense? And we'll say require call this the subtract. Point that to the subtract file, and let's see what happens now. And sure enough, the subtract function is in its own file, and I'm able to access it. Now, we're going to make a small change here, and I want you to follow along here. There is another way to export this. Let's say I want to have another function called add extra, for example, and let's say it has 3 parameters. Oops. And it returns the value of x plus y plus z, like so. Okay. Now, the question is, I've set module exports equal to add. Well, maybe I'm going to do this. Module.exports equals add extra. Let's try that. What we'll find is this won't work. If I do this, console.log add extra 4, 5, 6, what we're going to find is that add extra is going to be undefined, and sure enough it is. So the reason this is happening is because in this statement we've set the entire exports to one thing, and that one thing is add. So if we want to export more than one thing, what we can do is we can simply extend this like so. So what we're saying is we're creating a variable in the exports object called add and assigning it the add function. We're creating a variable called add extra on the exports object and assigning the add extra function. So now what's going to happen out here though, this still won't work. Let's just, in fact, even the add function is not working. What we're going to say is we need to change this because this is more than one thing. The variable name we're going to call it, these are the add functions, and then what we can do is we can say add functions dot add functions dot add extra, and so you'll see that now this will work, and sure enough it did. So what's cool about this is now, because of the way we're exporting these, we can export lots of things. We can just create a variable called message. Okay, export it. And this name can be anything. It's important to know that you are the one defining the name of this. So let's just call it Toad. And we'll assign Toad to the variable message. Now I can go into my app.js and I can just say console.log add functions.toad, and basically now the variable called message is now available to me here, and I should see the word hello world down here, and sure enough I do. Okay, that's all for this lesson.